What's up guys, Nathan here. Today we're going to cover pre-approval tips, such as things you need to look out for, and we've got one tip that could help you spot a coffee shop pre-approval, which could mean you could get declined even though you think you've got your ducks lined up in a row. Jaden, let's start off with what a pre-approval is.
A pre-approval is an indication from a bank. It's a preliminary assessment where the bank looks at your data. They say, hey, Nathan, you're earning enough money, you've got enough deposit, and your credit file looks fine for us to lend you money, subject to a few conditions. And this is where it gets difficult because, like Nathan said, there's different types of pre-approvals depending on the bank. By and large, a pre-approval is the first step you want to take in your mortgage journey. It gives you confidence. It means you can go out and start making offers, and you can feel better about making an offer knowing that the bank's actually going to give you the money rather than taking that risk.
Pre-approval is a commitment from a bank to say, yes, we're going to help you get this loan based on you finding the right property. So they'll assess your situation and put you in a position that you can feel confident about your finances. Jaden, why do you need to get a pre-approval from a professional?
Well, like I said before, and I guess as you said in the introduction, there's different types of pre-approvals. There's system-generated pre-approvals. So that's basically where you put your data, literally you put your numbers in the system. The computer says yes or no based on your income. You might not get it right. You might say, I'm on $100,000, but you forgot that includes your superannuation, which the bank won't include. You might have forgotten your HECS debt. And the system has said, yes, you're good to go, but no one's actually looked at it. And up until the point that you find a home, the bank can still say no. So those fast, instant pre-approvals are complete garbage. They're a waste of time. You don't even want to get that credit check put on your file because it's just worthless. So be aware of that, of those coffee shop pre-approvals. It's important to get a pre-approval, a fully assessed pre-approval from a professional like a mortgage broker that can help you through that process, because we know the difference. We know when the banks looked at your living expenses, they've looked at your statements, they've made sure that they're happily going to lend you the money, that things aren't going to change in the next month because of assessment rate changes. These factors all go into making you be able to confidently go out there and make offers on properties with a genuine pre-approval.
Working with a professional, you need to remember this is the largest likely purchase you're ever going to make in your life. So you want to work with someone you like and trust, someone that has great reviews, and someone that's going to be in your corner. Because when things get hard, you don't want them not picking up their phone or going missing in action, and you don't know what's going on. It's important that you get the right professional working for you. We talked about what a coffee shop pre-approval is. Jaden, explain to me a little bit more about this. I don't really understand, but what is a coffee shop pre-approval and what are the risks that are associated with these types of pre-approvals?
Yeah, so as I said before, there's two types of pre-approvals. There's that coffee shop automated pre-approval where the bank literally puts your numbers into the system. You can even sometimes do it on your internet banking and say, I want a pre-approval, and they'll spit out a letter straight away. The minute you hit the button submit, the minute later, you get a letter back saying, congratulations, you're pre-approved for $500,000. Go out shopping, subject to lots and lots of terms and conditions. And it can be 2 or 3 pages of conditions where it says, subject to verification of your income, checking your statements, your living expenses, satisfactory property, all these things. And that pre-approval is worthless. It's no better than just an online calculator like the stuff we've got on our website where you can just put in your income and it spits out a number saying, this is your borrowing capacity. What is worthwhile is getting a fully assessed pre-approval. And this is where it gets complicated because not all banks will do a fully assessed pre-approval unless you really ask them or unless you go to auction. So for example, with Bank West, they'll do a coffee shop pre-approval unless you go to an auction, you've actually got a registered bidders form. Otherwise, they just spit it out in the system and say like, congratulations, here's your pre-approval. And there's a lot of banks like this that will just give you that automated one because they don't want to spend resources on assessing your application because the banks know, unfortunately, only about 50% of pre-approvals actually go ahead and people find properties. So this is the thing to be careful of. Firstly, you want to fully assess pre-approval. You want a broker that understands how the pre-approvals work. Because again, not all pre-approvals are created equal. The most common one we see at the moment is the way that banks assess your borrowing capacity. So as we've seen lately, interest rates have been going up. And with increasing interest rates, it means your borrowing capacity decreases because the repayments are higher. So then the bank's going to lend you less because your income doesn't go as far. Some banks will give you a pre-approval and say, yep, Nathan, today you're good to go for $1 million purchase. We're happy to give you that money, subject to change in the future. If you come back in 2 months' time, the interest rates have increased by 1%, your borrowing capacity might have gone from 1 million to 800, depending on your situation. And they're going to assess at that point. So there are some banks, however, that will lock in that assessment rate for 3 months. So again, working with a mortgage broker, knowing these intricacies, knowing these little bits and pieces and these sort of tricks that catch young players out can help you confidently go and buy a place, secure a home, and mean that you're not going to miss out and get to that point in 2 months' time where you're not gonna be able to buy that home.
I think it's important to be aware that with a coffee shop pre-approval, no one's actually looked at it. So you're going to go out, start searching for homes. You're going to put in a lot of legwork, and you get to the point where you found the right property. If the bank's not looked at it, they could actually decline your application. And you've done all that work. There's a lot of upfront costs, a lot of time and effort gone into it. You want to get that pre-approval fully assessed and looked at. Working with a broker that understands that, make sure that it gets fully assessed and potentially locks in your assessment rate for the next 3 months, so you're not going to have dramas with your borrowing ability. Is definitely something wise to do.
Nathan, this happened earlier in the year with one of my clients. We did a pre-approval for Darren back in May. And at the time, it was before the rate started going up, and he was good to go for $500,000. It seemed all easy street, but over the next 3 months, the interest rates went up month after month after month. And his borrowing capacity, if we'd done a brand new pre-approval at that point, had gone down to $350,000. It got shredded. Luckily, we'd had a pre-approval that was based on the initial assessment rate. The bank still honored it and said, yep, when you did the pre-approval in May, we're going to lock in those assessment rates. We're happy to still give you the loan for the original amount, and they're good to go. These little things like that can catch you out if you're not aware of them.
The next question we get asked a lot is, when should we start the conversation? Jaden, what's your opinion on this? Is early the better? Is it when you actually need the loan, you should start the conversation? What does that look like?
I think more than ever, some of those online calculators can be a little bit misleading. Some of the banks haven't updated them with the changes in assessment rates. So I had a conversation with a couple yesterday. They were wanting to build their wealth. They wanted to buy 4, 5, 6 investment properties, and we're starting with their first one at the moment. So we were doing the assessment, the figures, and they said, well, we've done the calculators. We've got, borrowing capacity of $2 million, so it seems. When we ran the actual numbers, the reality was a little bit different. They hadn't factored in their HECS. They hadn't factored in their credit cards, the salary sacrifice, and a bunch of other details that reduce the borrowing capacity to about half of what the online calculator showed them. So getting an assessment as early as possible will help you sort of set those goals, in the short to medium term, work out what's going to be possible, what that sort of budget looks like, and going to help you get to the market quicker.
The other thing that helps is when you do your assessment earlier, we'll look at things like your credit file, we'll assess your deposit, we'll assess your overall position. So if you're not ready straight away, we can get you on the right path and say, look, your credit file is low, you might need to close off some liabilities, you might need to talk to your provider that you forgot about this debt that went into collections, or if you don't have enough deposit, build that deposit up. Working with a broker earlier and understanding your position will ensure that when you are ready, you don't have anything that's missing or anything that's required.
Similar to this, Nathan, I spoke with Sandy about a month ago. She was looking at getting a pre-approval, had a deposit, had been patiently saving for years and years and years, and was ready to go. So as part of our initial checks, we did a credit check just to see what her credit file looked like. It was read-only, so it doesn't leave a record on there, but it just does what they call like a soft check, where you get a copy of the file. It says any previous applications you might have done, it has any repayment history, and credit cards that you might or might not be aware of. Unfortunately for Sandy, she'd had a credit card a few years ago that completely forgot. It was one of those G credit line ones that you get 0% interest, you pay off, or you think you pay off, and it's gone. Unfortunately for her, there was a $5 a month fee that she didn't know of. She thought it was gone, and it kept accruing, and it meant the card actually went into default. And it was showing his credit file as a default owing and missed repayments. It looked terrible. She had no idea. She called up, complained, tried to get it sorted, but unfortunately, they've been sending letters to an old address that she didn't live at anymore. It was a huge issue. Luckily, by getting in touch with us early, we were able to put her onto a credit repair company. They're able to get that completely removed, clean up her credit file, and it means today, fast forward a couple of months, that we can look at applying for a home loan.
And Jaden, walk me through knowing your budget, and should you stick with the bank you already bank with?
Each different bank has its own way of assessing your application. They look at your living expenses differently. They look at your borrowing capacity differently. Even the way they use the buffers in the background can be different depending on the bank. So as a result, your borrowing capacity can differ between $50,000 to $100,000 between one bank to the other. So if you're looking at working out what you can afford, it's worth chatting with the broker. If you just go to your bank directly, you're not going to know necessarily what they can potentially lend you or what you're potentially eligible for, because you're only getting one opinion rather than a panel or up to 30, as in our case, different options there.
It's important to remember here, guys, it's not about going for your maximum capability. It's about understanding what you're comfortable with affording. If you're currently paying $400 a week in rent and you're putting away an extra $100 a week in savings, you're probably comfortable at that $500 a week. If a bank comes up or a broker comes up to you and says, hey, look, you can afford $1 million, but that repayment's going to be $700 a week ongoing, well, that's probably not going to really match what you're comfortable with. So one, it's important to understand that you can shop around to maximize your capacity. But two, it's also important to understand your own individual budget, because what a bank will say you can lend might be completely different to what you're comfortable with. And doing those repayments, and we talk about mock mortgages where you pay your rent and then pay that little bit extra in savings, where you pretend you have that mortgage ongoing to get that comfort level, is always a good idea. How does a pre-approval speed up the purchase process?
It's always important knowing your budget, knowing sort of, as you know, when you negotiate, you need to know where you can start from and where you can finish, and not knowing that can be difficult. And even sometimes it's the case where people will miss out on a home by $2,000 or $3,000 or $5,000 because they didn't realize they had the budget there. So I think knowing that number, trying to stick to the limit, is really important.
Why is it important to know your loan options?
The amount of deposit you put down can make a big difference, not only for your loan repayments, but in what you pay in lender's mortgage insurance. I caught up yesterday with Tanya. She'd found a place to buy for about $380,000 and had actually a 15% deposit, but was trying to debate, do I put down the minimum deposit, keep some funds for renovations, or do I put down the 15% and try and avoid the lender's mortgage insurance? We stepped through a bunch of different options, and it was pretty interesting that if she went for the minimum deposit, so put in, say, $50,000, it would cost her $10,000 in lender's mortgage insurance that's added to the loan. Fast forward to, say, a 15% deposit, she'd have to put down a little bit extra. It'd go from $50,000 to $75,000, but she'd avoid paying that lender's mortgage insurance, saving $10,000 in fees. The situation is going to be different here. And if you have the deposit, sometimes it can make sense actually using it to reduce some of those costs and in turn reduce your repayments. There comes a situation. If you're looking at, your goals might be in building an investment portfolio and you want to keep your cash there to buy another property and use as your deposit next year, then it could make sense to pay the lender's mortgage insurance. This is where a broker like us can help out and sort of workshop and look at, well, here's option 1, here's option 2, here's option 3. What's going to make sense with your short to medium plans, and move forward with that.
Working with the top mortgage broker can help you navigate through the pre-approval process and get the best result possible. Did you know here at Hunter Galloway, we're mortgage brokers that deal with people Australia-wide? Simply call us on 1300 088 065 or visit our website huntergalloway.com.au and we'd be happy to help.